Hi, it's Mark back with another Photoshop tutorial, and today we'll be looking almost exclusively at the use of curves. So everyone's played, I guess, with curves. You've probably come along, bunged a curves adjustment layer on and brought down some of the darks and lifted the lights, called it a contrast, and moved on. And that's fine, that's exactly what it is. But today, by the end of this video, you'll know how to use curves to apply tints in red, green and blue, but also in cyan, magenta and yellow. You'll learn how to use curves to desaturate a picture. You'll learn how to use curves to do colour grading and matching colours, particularly useful in composites, and a host of other little tips and tricks, all to do with curves. And these are the pictures we will be using. Excuse me, I'm in the way. There we go, these are the pictures we'll be using. I will zip them all up and stick them on my website. I'll put the details down below in the notes for the video, and feel free to play along. So if you are going to play along, pause now, go grab them, I'll play the titles and we'll catch up on the other side. If you're not going to play along, keep it rolling. I'll see you shortly. Okay, let's start with a lightning tour of the buttons and such on curves, just to establish a common level of understanding. So we'll edit this one in Adobe Photoshop 2021, edit the original, Control or Command on a mark 0 to get that to full screen, and let's throw a curves adjustment tool on this. I'm going to go quite quickly through this bit. You can always go back for reference, but essentially the curves gives you the ability to manipulate the highlights, midtones and as well as colours graduated across this this histogram. So if we bring this down, it introduces a level of darks, and if we lift that up, it brightens the highlights. So that would be a traditional S-type curve. In fact, let's click on Auto. You should always try Auto on some of the tools, and Adobe's magic thinks that that is a better contrast curve to put in. There are also presets. We'll come to some of those later, but these are a good learning tool. So for example, if you weren't too sure about something, well, I'll tell you what, here's a real world example. Until recently, I didn't know how to make a negative of a picture easily, and I noticed that negative was one of the options in curves. So I clicked on it, and there's the negative. That's all well and good, but it also taught me how to do this. If you notice what it has done to the curve, it's moved the point that was in the bottom to the top, and the point that was in the top down to the bottom. So I've got a custom choice for it, but I also now know it's taught me how to create a negative. Bung that one up the top, bring that one down the bottom, and there's your negative. Not that I can think of a good reason for negatives at the moment, unless you're doing something in abstract or whatever, but there we go. So always have a play with the presets. We'll come back to the eyedroppers later. There is a pencil tool for drawing your own curve, although I don't particularly see the advantage of doing that. I'm not that finicky, and I think this is a bit too inaccurate to use. So we'll click Reset, which is this button here. So when you're working with curves, with this, you're working away and you want a quick look at what it was like before without undoing this, or without having to come down, switch the layer off and switch it on, you can just click on this I button, and for as long as you hold it down, the curves aren't disabled, which is useful sometimes if you're doing something across some of the colour channels and things and you want to just remind yourself of the underlying picture. You can do that. You've already seen me do the reset. That switches it on and off. That one moves it to the bin. That's why it's a bin. This one clips it to the layer below, so if you had 3 or 4 layers in the stack, the curves would now only impact the one immediately beneath. Once you've created some points and curves, you can click them and drag them off to make them disappear. So you can go back in, and we've got a tool for sampling colours and then applying them within the curves, but more of that later. So that, in essence, are the various parts of the curves. And then for everything I've just said, you can do it for the specific reds in a picture, You can do it for greens and you can do it for blues. Okay, so that's it. First picture, only there to demonstrate to you the various buttons, the look and feel, and we'll move on to do another picture now. So picture number 2, let's use this one. And here we go. Get rid of that layer, don't need that one. Okay, so what we're going to do here is apply a curves layer. And before we do anything with this, we're just going to look at the corners. We've already seen a little bit of it in the negative example, but if you take the corner there and you raise it, you lighten everything, the whole thing, as you can see. And this corner, if you want to bring it down, it darkens everything. Here, moving this one to the right, you reset the black point. So this histogram, black is in this corner, the blackest black is in this corner, the whitest white is in that corner. So if I move this point across to there, I've reset black to be here. Anything to the left of that, whatever shade that actually is, everything is considered as black. As you can see, it has a horrible effect on the picture, but sometimes if you just want to move the black point a little bit, you can do it from your curves, and similarly you can move the white point. So I'm saying everything from there to the right is considered pure white, and the curves will try and do that for you. Again, I do things in extreme to demonstrate to you to see it easier on screen, but in reality you'd just be using these subtly. And I would tend sometimes, if anything, just to sometimes just edge the black point over. If I was in Adobe Lightroom, I might be using the black slider to do just that as well. Okay, so that is without actually touching anything. Other than that, I mentioned the targeted adjustment tool. If you want to apply curves because we want to lift something out in here, say we thought that was brightened a bit, needed brightening a bit, then where on here would you target? I don't know. I would take a guess it was down the bottom half, but by using this you can come over, you can click and move. But before we do that, it's always worth mentioning sample size. If I was on point sample, that is a single tiny point, and just by moving that you can see that if you watch the line on the curve over here, quite a lot of variation in a very small fractional movement of my eyedropper. That's because it literally is a point. I can't tell what colour point there is under there, so but I can tell what it's roughly like. So I take a 5x5 example, and now you can see that's moving less erratically as I move my eyedropper. Okay, got my eyedropper, I'm in the darker bits here, and I just want to brighten those just a touch. There, so that's helped me brighten those, but you know what? It's over brightened the rest. So there's two things you can do here. Let's just reset that, drag it out. First thing is you can, and this isn't often shown, not that it's a special trick or anything, you can deliberately put an anchor in there, and then we could come in here, back to here, and we can start to lift that up. And it doesn't impact the rest as much, but you can still see it does curve the rest the other way. So you could put a second anchor in, and then when you're in here and move, and there's less deformation of the rest of the curves line. So that's another way of giving yourself some control. The beauty of this with curves, of course, is you could actually really put as many points in as you like when you're actually working with curves. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not looking at the screen. I'm just deliberately showing you that you can use multiple points on your curves. The second way to have fixed this issue where we wanted to brighten in there, so I click, hold and bring it up, is simply to mask it all out. So I would now go Control I on the mask to invert it, B for my brush tool, D for default colours, white reveals and black hides. We're on white. I've got a soft brush and bring the flow down a little bit, If you don't know the difference between opacity and flow, I'll put a link to a video above now, which tells you exactly what the differences are. And we can just brush in there and bring that lightness back in to where we particularly wanted it before and after. So that's another way of manipulating things. Now, one of the things I tend to do is use multiple curves. If I want to do something else with that, yes, I could start and look up here, but I'd rather call this under bridge, shadow, lighten. And then if I wanted to do something else, I could come back and put another curves in. And this time I'll use the target adjustment again. And I want to bring up that. But I'm going to use the other method this time. So I'm going to actually just pin it. And then come in here. And then call that one foreshore foliage. And it just keeps track of the various things that you're doing. And it is good practice. And this leads me to another tip. So this one, I don't think I've really seen this one either. We mentioned if you've got multiple layers, you can clip. So you clip by clicking there. And so whatever I do on this curves now will impact this picture. No, it won't. It will impact the layer beneath, even though it is not a picture. And that's the next tip. The next tip is about using curves on another effect. Bear with me while I delete these. And let's put in, so I'll put a solid color adjustment layer in here. Let's pick something a bit more, that's full colors. Okay, which I think is a bit too bright, but bear with me. I'm going to put a curves layer on. And I'm going to clip the curves layer to the lookup layer. So it's not to an image, it's clipped to an adjustment. And I want to do that to bring down the overall level on that. Now, if that wasn't clipped, you can see the impact that curves layer is having on the image. But because it's clipped, it's not impacting the image, it's impacting the effect on the image, if that makes sense. So you can use curves to manipulate adjustment layers. So if we wanted to, for example, staying with this one, take the reds and add a little bit more reds in to that adjustment, we can actually do that. And that curves is now impacting the lookup, which is itself impacting the background. And it's not often used, but it is very, very useful if there's part of a particular effect you're playing with on color grading or a color lookup or something, or even hue and saturation, and you want to just add a little bit of an adjustment to it. You can use curves to do that. And of course you can use curves by targeting it as well, by masking it all out and brushing it back in. Control I or Command I to put it back. And of course you can still use this to manipulate. So that's how you use curves to impact other effects. And with that, I think we shall pause and go and grab another picture. So let's use this one. So edit in Adobe Photoshop. Took its time to do that. Command 0 to get it taller. So what I want to do here with my curves layer is introduce a little bit of color grading. So I'm going to put a curves adjustment layer on, and I want to put some warmth into the yellows here. So I want to make into the bright highlights. I want to make it a little bit more warm by adding yellow. So how would I do that? Well, I'd obviously go and grab my blue channel. Blue, yep, blue. And the reason is that each color has a natural opposite. So blue, if I come up really harshly here, you'll see everything's gone blue. But the opposite of blue is yellow. So if I come down below our diagonal line, I start to get yellow in. While we're on the subject, if I choose my green, I can increase greens in a picture, but if I come the other way from below, if I come south of the line, I start to get magenta. And finally, if we were to use red, of course I can introduce reds, but if I come below, it's cyan. So that's how across curves you actually have got multiple colours, not just the red, green and blue. So let me just reset that because I've made a mess of it, and choose my blue, and I just want to bring a little bit of yellow warmth in to that. Yes, a bit more subtle, that's fine. Perhaps a little bit more. There we go. And then once I've done that, I want to go to RGB and just put a little bit more contrast in, and go before and after. There you go. Something where I've actually done something subtly for a change to demonstrate it, and that's how we would actually do that. While we're on this particular layer, we will look at another thing now, and that's how to desaturate something in curves. So I'll just bring a warming. I'll just bring another curves adjustment layer on, and this one is going to be called for desat. There you are, desaturate. How do you desaturate in curves? Well, the easy way to do desaturate in curves is to make this line horizontal. But first, you have to put the layer into colour. Okay, and if we take that to, and I'll just use the grid line just to keep me nice and straight, there, and I'll bring this one down to there. I've now desaturated that picture. Let's switch off our warming layer just for a moment. For no other reason, I just wanted to have one curves just showing to make sure it wasn't a combination of these effects. If my horizontal line had been there, you can see there's a little bit of colour back in there, and horizontal, it's desaturated. If my horizontal line was way up here, again, and it doesn't matter, you're not seeing a different picture from if I've got it there or if I've got it down the bottom. So that's how you would desaturate a picture in curves. And one of the nice things to do is you can get a faded saturation, so you can leave it partly black and white with the suggestion of colours, which is a technique I kind of like. I would do something like that and then also bring out some stronger yellows. It would have a more muted effect because we are mostly black and white, but I would do something like that. Okay, so you can use curves to desaturate, and we've done a little bit of tinting there. I'm not going to give an example of tinting on red, green, blue, and go through them all. You get the gist. You can use it for that. One thing to take away from what we've just done is the layer blend mode. So if I put a curves on, and again I'm just going to go a bit over the top this time. So that is a contrast style. That's impacting the whole image. If I change the blend mode to colour, then that is not changing the colour at all. Sorry, that is not changing luminance values. That's purely applying it to the colours. And if I change it to luminosity, then it's not changing the colours at all. It's actually the luminance values of those colours. So without changing colours, and you want to change the luminosity, which is the brightness of the colour, you can drop the curves layer into luminosity. If you're okay with the luminosity values and you want to actually play with the colours, put some more contrast in the colours, you can pop it into colour. Other than that, normal. But you know what? I'm an advocate of trying them all, see what they do. Darken, that's an interesting effect. And while we're on the subject of just having clicked on multiply there, that brings me to the last one before we move on to the next picture. If you want to put some contrast just across your picture, of course you could go to brightness contrast, but you can put any adjustment layer in at all. So I'm just going to use hue and saturation. And the secret now is not to bother changing it. See, switching it on and off has no effect whatsoever to the picture, so we haven't altered anything. But if I now change the blend modes, for example, to multiply, it throws quite a strong contrast in, and then I can dilute to taste with my opacity. Seriously, doesn't matter which one I put in. So if we put in, I don't know, put in channel mixer. Again, I've not made any changes to the channel mixer, but if I change the blend mode to multiply, I'll get dark. But then have a go at the others as well. What do the others do? Sometimes you can find something that is a bit of a surprise. Said Mark, going down to see if anything's going to jump out like that. I mean, isn't that just absolutely wonderful? Not. But you can just go through and play with some of these things and see how they work. That's my philosophy. It's not going to break. Your computer's not going to blow up. You can always go delete, 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 and start again. Right, let's choose another picture. Alright, been wanting to do this one. I like this picture. This is Souter Lighthouse in between South Shields and Sunderland. A great area of the coast to walk down. Some lovely photography opportunities. Marsden Grotto, the cliffs. Really, really good. What am I doing? Yes, I'm editing this in Adobe Photoshop. There we go. Edit original. Incidentally, when you see some of my pictures I'm editing and you see something called layer 1, that's usually just the layer I've added to put my signature on. So I'll get rid of it though, just so we're not confused. Right, here is, oh, and I applied an oil paint effect to it, which is why that says my oil painting. I'm just going to make that a background layer so it looks a bit more like normal. There you go. Not that it changes anything, that it locks it. Okay, we're going to dodge and burn. Do you know what dodge and burn is? Dodging and burning is the deliberate darkening and lightening of a picture or a portrait or whatever. And we're going to do that here using two curves layers. So the first one, I'm going to add curves, and I'm really going to bring this down quite a lot. Call it burn. And I'm going to invert the mask so you don't get to see anything. And I'm going to do another curves there. And I'm going to really brighten things up quite a lot. Call it dodge. Invert the mask so you don't see it. Alright, so we've got what's essentially a layer which makes things very dark and a layer which makes things very bright. If we go B for our brush tool, we want white to reveal, so we want our colour, D for default, so there's my white. I've got a nice soft brush there. I'll bring my flow down a little bit, and let's just say for the sake of argument, I wanted to darken the roof. So click on the burn, and just start painting there to darken the roof. Okay, so that'll be an area of burning things, and we'll get this little bit of roof on the other side as well. There, okay. And we want to brighten something, so what should we brighten? Let's brighten some of the grass. Grass? Yes, let's brighten the grass. So I'm on the dodge layer. Do you know what? I'm just going to try and match that circle-ish. I'm going to lower the flow right down, and I'm just going to click once, and again, and again. There you are. So we've dodged and we've burnt. And that is how you use curves for dodging and burning. Right, if I haven't done already, because I honestly can't remember, I'll put a video together on how to make these tiny planets It is quite simple, and it's good fun, and it really works well if you've got a picture which has got something quite tall in it, such as the lighthouse. Let's choose another picture and move on. Okay, which one haven't we used? We haven't used this one, we haven't used this one. Let's use the swing bridge. Edit in Photoshop. I'm going to do a quick composite here, and for a more comprehensive look at composites and various tools, including curves, which you can use to achieve composites, looking also at perspective as well, and color grading, then if you look at the link just above now to one of my other videos. But finish off watching this one first, please. Right, so let's use Pexels to find ourselves a picture, and I typed in dinosaur. What's Pexels? Pexels is a free plugin for Photoshop that allows you to browse a whole bunch of stock photos and click and use them in your pictures for free. If you want to know more about Pexels, including how to install it and set it up and use it in Photoshop, I'll put a link to my Pexels video above now. But let's click on this dinosaur. And there, the dinosaur is loaded. Control T, make him a bit smaller for now. Let's take him somewhere down there, a bit bigger, I think. I'm not doing a massively good composite here, by the way. I'm not going to do all the tricks and tips that you need. You can check out that other video for that. Press enter. I now want to unclip this because it's, as you can see, it's clipped to this. I don't need it to be, so I hold my Option key, and you can see how the icon changes. I'll unclip it. Okay, let's cut this person out, this dinosaur out really quick. So W to call it one of my selection tools. It doesn't matter which tool it was, but it happened to be up here. It happened to be this time the quick selection tool. It could have been any of the ones in the W group that it was last used. And choose select subject. Quick eyeball of that. Kind of looks okay, except down here I think we need to get his foot in as well. And two little bits that are gaps there, so I will now click on select mask, Control plus to blow this up, press my spacebar to move it around, and I just want to get rid of that bit in there which I spotted, and the rest looks fine. A little bit on there. You see, I say that I won't fiddle, and then I go on and fiddle, and then you've got some blue over his nose there. Let's get rid of that. I'm just going to say that's fine. So I'm going to click OK to output to selection, and click on my mask tool, and then Control minus to zoom out again, Control 0, sorry, to get it centered. Now that looks artificial. In my other video you'll learn more about perspective, you'll learn more about shadows and such to make it correct. But one of the main things you can do, which it really helps, is to try and blend the luminosity and start your color grading journey. So we're going to do that with curves. Click on curves. Now this is the one time in curves where you don't dive straight in, you have to click on the tool. By default it'll come up on the mask, and you can go in and use these, but it won't work the way we expect it to unless you actually click on the tool itself. Okay, these are blacks, midtones and whites. We're now going to click on each in turn. Double click, in fact, double click on the blacks, and then pick a color. So I'm going to pick a black from the background layer. I'm trying to match what I think my black point is on the background layer, possibly over here actually. It looks a bit darker, so, and you can see it's not entirely black, it's got these reds in it as well, so I'm going to call that my black. Click OK. Do I want to save it as a default? Yes I do for now. Come on my greys, double click, and this time I'll pick a grey, possibly from the pavement here, a bit lighter. Yeah, I'm going to take that and possibly bring it down just a little bit manually, and I'm going to click OK and say yes, and then I'm going to take my lights, double click on there, and I'm not going to choose the sky, which is an obvious contender, because if I choose the sky I think it's far too bright and it's blown out, so I'm actually going to use the whites and pick the whites out of the dirty white that is on the swing bridge there. So you can see it's brought that down a bit, and click OK. So what I've done now is I've primed the eyedroppers for blacks, midtones and whites with what I'm seeing as blacks, midtones and white points in the picture behind. Our curves layer, if I now clip it, and what does clipping do? It just means that anything we do now will only impact the layer beneath, which is our dinosaur. So now that we've done that, if I click on the lights once, not twice before to bring up the color options and then choose the color, pick the color, once to say this is the tool I want to use, and find a white point on our dinosaur, and I'm going to use the tread of his trainers. And then I'm going to click there for greys, and I'm going to use the grey on his butt. And then I'm going to say a black point, and I'm going to use the black in his mouth. Now, the difference before and after. We've matched more the luminosity. I know it's a crazy composite, but we've matched more of the luminosity, and that is already an awful lot better. Check out my other video and you'll learn about how to do much more on this, including getting the perspective exactly right and how to get shadows and such in to match the natural light in it and make this look half decent. But that in itself is quite an improvement from there to there. And that was my final tip, I think, for curves. Oh no, one more before we go. Let's put curves on here. And it's a global one this time. So if I want to, if I click on my mask, I can go to color range straight from the mask. When I'm in color range, I can say I can choose highlights, midtone shadows, or sampled colors. I'm now going to sample colors, choose the eyedropper, and I'm going to sample the dark red in there. And you can see how that's now reflected on that mask. And I click OK. So from within the mask, I just went to sample color range and chose something. Now that I've got that, it doesn't matter about clipping because I want that color to be impacted from my curve throughout the entire picture. And what I want to do is I want to darken those reds, as you can see. So if I switch off and on, you can see how it's brought dark at the reds, and it'll have done the same with the grade that's on the dinosaur. So that's my final tip. It wasn't necessarily curves because you can do it in other things, but if you click on the mask next to the adjustment layer, you can go and use color range from there. There are other ways to get to it, but you know, it's sitting in front of you, so that's the shortcut to get to it. I hope you found that all useful. These are the pictures that will be in the bundle. I know we didn't use that one, but you can have that one anyway to play with. And if you did find it useful, please click on subscribe and give me a thumbs up if it warrants it. If it doesn't warrant it, tell me why, because I always want to learn. I have done some videos here purely on the suggestion of other people, so I hope they particularly helped. And any questions, throw them in the comments below. That's it. Until we meet again, I'm going to click on this little button above which stops recording. Stop recording mark. Bye now.